All right, everybody.
Yikes.
I'm going to introduce Livy, who's going to introduce everything.
Mar, are you?
We are ready for you, Livy.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well, we want to welcome you all. Oh my gosh, that light is so bright. I want to welcome you all to the Advancing Seven Rays seminar. And we have this year 2 topics that we're going to be covering. The first one is glamour, and we will be focusing on that. You know, glamour is illusion tinged by emotion on the astral mental plane. So distortions and fogs and mists that prevent us from perceiving what is real and valid. And so first we will be focusing on individual glamour, and these are found on different rays have different glamours. So that will be what we will be focusing on first, the glamours of the rays for individuals, and helping us discern what glamours we might have in our own makeup. And then there is world glamour. World glamour we see today all over. There's no region of the world or country that is not showing signs of world glamour. You know, wherever there's hate and anger and fear and separativeness, glamour is found. And it's a critical problem today at this important time for humanity with what is coming up. And so, you know, what can be done about this? Well, this is one of the things we're going to share with you with this initiative that we're launching at the conference for group service to help dispel world glamour. And we'll tell you more about it, and we'll hope you'll want to join us. But learning about individual glamour is really key. This qualifies us for this world service. And then the second topic that we're doing at the Seven Ray Seminar is focusing on the techniques of fusion along the path of discipleship. So this important subject will be covered following that. Anyway, right now I want to turn the floor over to Michael Robbins, president of the SRUSR, who will lead us in all of it.
Well, you know, Livy really got this started. Livia Hansen, several years ago, wasn't it? You said we've got to do something about the 7 rays. You know, obviously a major part of esoteric psychology. So what did we do? We began with a 7 ray seminar. And was it 4 years ago or was it 5? Four was it? And then we went the next year into a continuation, and we talked about the physiognomy and the appearance of people, and we dealt with also what's called the techniques of integration, which allows us to integrate our personalities, readying them for fusion with the soul. And last year we had the joy of dealing with the law of repulse, you know, along 7 different directions. And now we're moving into some more rather advanced work. Our team is not fully present, is it? But our techniques of integration, techniques of fusion team, our Advancing 7 Ray 7 seminar team is, well, we have 2 Evas, Eva Marie Simonson, and we have Eva Smith from Toronto, and we have Kathy Newburn somewhere, but she'll be here. And then tomorrow, when we'll use the morning to work on the glamours a bit, okay? And then Olivia and my wife Tuya and I will kind of direct some exploration of the glamours of the 7 rays. Now, you know, glamour's a hard thing to see. The last thing you see about yourself is your glamours. That's the tough part. Everybody sees it, you know, but you don't. And we have to become more aware of these things. It's just amazing. In those letters that DK wrote to his students, how he really had to point out the nature of these distortions of truth, which people were subject to, and they didn't see it, you know, and some of them could never really understand it and could never really get out of it, you know. But you can always tell when somebody tells you, you know, well, I think you should improve this because it's, oh, that's just the way I am. Well, that's going to be a great defense of your glamorous position. There's kind of an unwillingness to change your attitudes. We'll talk a little bit about the root causes of glamorous. It's a subtle subject. It's elusive. It's hard to grasp. But until we grasp it, there will be no reality in our lives. And my glamour and illusion, it's the world miasma, you might say, and we're all wandering around in it, and as a result, we're disconnected from the a really effective expression of the divine plan. So it's a real problem today. It was when DK wrote about it, of course, Glamour World Problem, and today the whole World War II was an example of glamour. Now, how he gave it, he basically said, okay, Japan is Maya, Germany is glamour, and Italy is illusion. And by far the strongest of them was the glamour, because the astral body of our planet is the strongest factor on our planet. We still have a lot of, our planetary logos, wise as he is and great, still has some cosmic astral problems, and is seeing a cosmic astral psychologist, I suppose. And pretty soon we'll be graduating to a high and new level. You know, he'll master the second cosmic initiation, but not just yet. And in terms of his perspective, or its perspective, it doesn't seem very long, but for us it's millions and millions of years. Meanwhile, we will do our bit as we struggle through. He's kind of passing through a fourth type of initiation on this particular planet, and the solar logos is also focused there as well. And he says, well, the planetary logos is the observer in this case, and you are the cells, then it's up to you to suffer. So I thought that was a good invitation. Page 384 in a treatise on cosmic fire. But we gain a lot by suffering, and I know we become tenderized a bit. And if necessary, a certain tenderization is needed in order to be receptive to reality. Anyway, now, tonight how many are relatively new to the subject of the 7 rays? Okay? And of course this means, you know, because what we usually do, and we will do it again, is that Eva Smith will take the people for whom this is a relatively new subject. Where's it going to be, Eva, right off the...
To the left as you walk.
Okay, we walk in the lobby and the room off to the left, and she has a wonderful presentation which really gets you up to speed on what the 7 rays are doing, because what we're going to do tonight is a retrospective. And if you haven't thought so much about the 7 rays or applied them to your life, there's no use to retrospect. You know, you've got to be informed of what it's all about. So we thought that the very thing to do would be to begin by going with Eva and get up to speed on the whole business of the 7 rays, and the rest of us will have our retrospective of how we have expressed the rays during the past years. We call this revelations, and we hope that everybody has some examples of how evidences in their lives or confirmations or maybe questions or conflicts about what they've expressed during the last year in terms of the 7 rays. So if the relatively new people would go with Eva, you're going to get a really good show, and you'll come back knowing more than we do.
What time do you want us back?
No.
What time do you want us back?
I want you back by 9 o'clock.
Okay.
That gives you enough time?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I had a little bit. It didn't make sense because the alignment is all about what you've done with it already. Okay. All right. But now we will have our little meditation or alignment. And let's see, Francis, maybe we close that door. That'd be okay? Thank you. Now, I don't know how many of you go through the year obsessing about your rays as I do. I've been I've been obsessing for many a moon. Once I got on the subway and I was deep in agony. I was going to the arcane school. I was working there, and I was in the middle of this whole ray thing, because for me it was the most important thing to find out what my rays really were. And of course, having a lot of third ray, I thought of every possible combination in the world. So I got on the subway, and this guy is wearing a t-shirt. "You are 6 MR. You are 6 MR. I said, okay, now we know something. I said, boy, that's a double-barreled coincidence. I always figured I was the 6-ray soul that was making transition onto the 2nd ray before I devastated too much. And I think I have just about made it. But there's many a battle in the past, and now they're all back in the classes. Okay. Well, we're going to now look, you know how it goes. Your soul ray is the main thing for the moment. The monadic ray is a later kind of thing. It basically conditions everything. The only thing you ever are is the spirit of the monad, but we're not going to reach into that. The whole question of the higher rays exists, but I think we've got to be certain about what our soul ray is as much as we can. And the odds are that you're going to be a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or in these kind of groups, maybe 6th ray soul. Not many 4th or 5th ray souls here. Not many. And probably none. And the 7th ray comes in occasionally. But the 2 and 6 are very strong. And most occult groups are made up of the 1st and 2nd ray souls. And what was there, about 8 first ray souls in the Tibetans group out of 50, so maybe 20%. And most were 2nd ray. And then you had a couple of 3rd ray souls. And they didn't make it, really. And you had a couple of 7th ray souls, and they had a tough time. Really interesting, the ones that made it were the 2nd and 1st rays. They made it through. And then, of course, you have a personality ray. It can be any one of the 7. And your mind is usually on the 1st, 4th, or 5th ray, usually, except if you're a disciple, as they say. And then it can be any. But we had an old saying, if you hear hoofbeats, think of horses first and wildebeest second. So, it's probably, the 1, 4, and 5 is important. And then your astral ray is usually 2 and 6. Although there are fair smatterings of ray 1 types in the Tibetans group, a lot of suppression, a lot of control of the astral vehicle, and may not be too healthy, but necessary. And then when you come to the outer form, usually ray 3 or 6, 3 or 7. There were some 6-ray physical bodies, and a number of ray 1 physical bodies, which meant, he said, that your brain was on that particular ray. So we probably all have our theories, and we haven't necessarily had Master DK to materialize and give us our rays as these were given, but it forces us to think. It's good, We have our theories, and then we have our legacy rays, things that used to be prominent in a previous life, maybe a recently previous life, maybe that was always happening. People were always confusing what they were in the previous life and what they are now. This guy was a real 5th ray type, and he says, I've got a 5th ray personality. He says, well, no, you don't. You have a 5th ray mind, which was a 5th ray personality in your last life. And the ray has worked its way down into the mental area, and now you have a 7th ray personality. So there were all these shifts that were going on. And then he gave us a big hint about how rays can work their way down through the vehicles, appearing in a higher one and then moving into the lower one. So actually, it ends up being a fairly complicated system, which, if our intuition were really alive, we could just see it, okay? But we're not DK yet, and we have to see how we can see. Obviously, we're going to get better in esoteric psychology as we go. So this is a retrospective, because tonight, while they're off learning a little bit about the rays, we're going to get into groups. And where is Kathy? I'm so glad you're here. Okay. We're going to get into groups, and we're going to look back. We're going to reaffirm our ray formula as we think it exists and why we think it exists. And then we're going to talk about any revelations we've had concerning integration, if it's something comes up, or if you've been operating on the law of repulse, if you've been here for the last couple of years, any examples of that kind of thing. And then we will try to offer evidences from our recollection during this year of ray demonstrations, how it has worked for us. You know, we know it's this because this happened. You always got to be observing yourself in certain circumstances, you know. I had sometimes, you know, I'm so fourth ray, sixth ray kind of thing, and I had this thing that happened to me because I thought I was leaving the fourth ray behind. Until I got into this terrible conflict over, you know, which way to go on a very, very important issue, and I absolutely took the fourth ray position in the middle of it all, you know. So I said, well, it's not quite dead yet. Okay, so that was a piece of evidence for me that the fourth ray was alive and well. And that, you know, what's getting stronger, what's getting weaker, that's what you want to know. And some of our new tests are meant to help you do that. Now, maybe some of you know that Rick and I and Kathy and I, is Kathy here? Kathy Mankin? Anyway, she's probably we're working very hard to bring in the final PIP3, okay? We've had a beta test for the third PIP. We've been on it for 30 years, you know? We've had different personal identity profiles, really ray profiles, and now we're trying to offer our final test for this incarnation. And then we also have something called the Terra, or should we call it the Terror? I don't know. It takes about 3 weeks to take. It's got a mere 888 questions or something like that. You will enjoy it. But it does help to explore your higher rays. You know, it really tries to target the rays for the vehicles. And you will be exploring your soul ray, but your soul sub-ray. You'll be exploring your monadic ray, but your monadic sub-ray. And what's going on in the spiritual triad. As much as you can do that with your mind plus a little intuition. At least it gives you a hint. So the people who are really ray fanatics, you know, we have stuff for you to get into that will help you clarify your situation. All right. And then, you know, maybe at the end of this incarnation, just when your rays are changing, getting ready for your next incarnation, you'll know what your rays were. It is interesting, though, in the last third of your life, though, the personality ray that you're going to have for the next incarnation does begin to shape up. He's shown that, you know. So then you have these phases, these kind of fade in, fade out situations. And so it's all very fluid in a certain respect. And it's not really like chunky and concrete. It's absolutely this. He says your vehicle is definitely an aggregate of fifth ray energies. See what I mean? All that's coming from astrology. It's a lot more complex than we usually think it is. But in the last analysis, we get a nice ray as the vector quantity of the whole thing, and we work with that. Okay, we work with that. So let's get into kind of a little meditative attitude. And of course, if you should want to take notes, you certainly can, but this will be a brief alignment. So if we quiet down enough, we realize that we are the observer. We are the soul in incarnation. We are the consciousness that is confined to a certain field with several different vibratory levels. But the most important thing is that we can be the observer of these fields, which are usually called the etheric physical, the astral or emotional, and the lower mental field. And then, if you put them all together, you will get what's called the composite elemental, or the personality elemental, which has its own quality. So, as the observer, in this case, just sort of review your year and anything that may have occurred, particularly on the physical plane, regarding your physical nature and your vitality and the way you have managed your physical plane life. And does anything stand out for you there, confirming or giving evidence of the quality of a ray, which has seemed to characterize your physical plane life during the last year since we've been here? As I said, usually the third and the seventh ray are the common ones. But for the people that are disciples, anything can happen. It's basically activity and order, one or the other. But maybe something comes to you about that. Excuse me. But of course, all of that is directed from higher motivational levels. So, there has been, of course, it's hardly anyone that gets through a year without some kind of emotional reactivity, or some kind of, attraction, repulsion, sensitivity, feeling, all that. So kind of examine, as the observer, your emotional, sentient feeling life during the past year. Let's see if any particular quality about that emerges for you. Ray 2 and 6 are the usual, maybe a lot more people on Ray 6. The Ray 2 is calmer, and the Ray 6 is rather more intense and devotional, aspiring. Sometimes it's a contrast between passion and compassion. Moments stand out as being of particular significance. Were there emotional highs and lows? Was it all steady and even? Were there moments of reactivity? Were there moments of fear? Those are the things you want to note. Then, of course, there's the mind, which people like ourselves tend to be using quite a bit because we are students of the ageless wisdom, and we have progressed a fair amount upon the path. What has your mental process shown? Usually ray 1, 4, or 5, you know, the analysis of ray 5, the more colorful and sometimes picturesque, imaginative quality of ray 4, with its conflicts back and forth about decisions and other things, or the more certainty of ray 1 and the simplicity of it, where you know what you know, and you often simplify it all, synthesize it all, and impress it upon others. Ray 1, 4, and 5 usually. But there are other rays, of course. All you need is a few instances that show themselves to you in terms of your experience during the last year or two. And then, of course, there's the whole question of our personhood in the world. The integrated being, combination of mind, emotions, and body, who is doing something in the world in a certain way. In the beginning, it might be your career ray, but then later it might be called simply the sub-ray of the soul. It's the way your soul purpose gets out in the world and presents itself in your circumstances. The integrated human being, the personality. It can be any one of the 7. It can be power. It can be love, wisdom. It can be creative intelligence, activity. It can be harmony through conflict and struggle. It can be the more factual, technical, clear thinking, practical 5th. It can be the devoted, aspirational 6th. It can be the highly organized and effective 7th. Anything there that confirms for you what that ray probably is, your personality ray. And finally, you know, the story is really that you actually are, as the spirit, you really are the observer of your soul life. You know, you have a purpose, which is trying to express itself life after life. It's along one of the 7 lines, you know, the governor, the teacher, the manipulator, or, you know, communicator, you might say, the harmonizer, or the war, you know, bringer of war, the expert, the inspirer, the magician. A lot of glamour around that word, of course. You've got to be careful with that. But one of the 7 soul rays is ours, and it stays, except for maybe one change in the course of millions of years, maybe one change, maybe not, it stays the same. So whatever, it's always the consistent theme of what you're trying to contribute to the world, and you contribute it through various kinds of personality rays and various kinds of astrological charts, but behind it all, you're trying to sound this note of your soul ray. So what is your evidence, you know, what is your confirmation when you at this time choose to hypothesize that it is one or other of the rays? Why do you say so? And of course, the books are filled with marvelous stanzas from the old commentary that really help you make this decision. You know, esoteric psychology 1 and 2 are just loaded with those kinds of potent phrases which help you recognize yourself. You know, DK gave the names of the various Ray Lords, maybe 20 names for each. And he says these are useful if they help the individual recognize his ray. So I won't get into the triad and, you know, all that, and the monad and all that, which is fascinating stuff. But we have to put first things first. So, you know, maybe this year you recognize some kind of conflict going on between rays. Usually friction calls attention to itself. So if you've recognized any kind of conflict, it does oftentimes tell you who are the players that are in conflict. Or maybe you've noticed yourself really repulsing an old way of doing things and doing things in a better way on the same ray. Because there's old ways of responding to a ray, and there are new and better ways. Of course, these law of repulse dynamics actually work out over several lives, so it's not like you necessarily do the whole thing in one life, but it's a real reversal, you know. You repulse the old way. Or maybe you have noticed that your rays are coming together in a more integrated manner. So you feel more like a whole person instead of divided into different areas that are kind of what DK calls it internecine warfare. You know, my emotions are fighting with my mind's fighting with my body, and all that kind of stuff. Maybe things have been integrating for you under a certain integration formula. And of course, what we're going to be dealing with this time is the extent to which your soul ray is really infusing all of the aspects of your personality and environment. And that's a more advanced stage. And in this case, when it happens, your personality is no longer at war with your soul ray, but truly becomes an effective instrument, an effective sub-ray of your soul ray. And that's our objective, that they work together harmoniously. But so often, when there's a conflict between two ways of being, you can tell the nature of the quality of energy which are in conflict. You know, big changes in your life and so forth. I'll read that again on page 335 of Esoteric Psychology 2. It's really marvelous to show how the changes in your life indicate oftentimes your personality and soul ray. So there it is. We have certain energies always available to us, and instead of just letting them run us, we can intelligently, and with the attitude of love and with the attitude of will which knows something of the divine plan, we can use these rays in the right way, at the right time, in the right place, for a more effective spiritual living. It's a type of conscious living. So we'll close off this reflection with an Om. Now, our next opportunity will be to divide into groups and have a chance to really discuss with each other some of the things that have actually happened during the year that we say, hey, this is evidence. This is my experience. This confirms for me something. This puts me in doubt. Something like that. Okay? Now, I know some of you, I'm going to recruit a few people here that didn't know you were going to be recruited. Okay? Because you have sufficient experience to help me out. Okay, so don't refuse me now, Jeff and Dwayne. And Livy and Kathy and Eva Marie. There are going to be 5 groups, and I'm going to be a wandering ear, okay? So you're going to get into your groups, and you're going to discuss your life during the last year or two, and how you see the confirmations. I know I'm this ray because. I begin to doubt that I have this ray because. In this year or two, these rays were in conflict in my life, and I don't know what to do about it, you know, that kind of thing. So we're going to call it Revelations. You know, it's just going to be talking about our lives and how the rays played a part in our lives. So if you were inclined to sleep at this point, drop that thought and enter into this discussion. We have about an hour and 15 minutes for this discussion. So can we have the facilitators come up here just for a moment? Okay. These guys, they have so much experience in the whole field that it's not right for them to just sit in the audience, you know. All right. So these will be your 5 facilitators, and you will just have an opportunity to talk about your life in terms of ray dynamics that you have noticed, okay? And I'm sure many of you will have quite a story, but make sure that you give everybody a fair chance to discuss and then get into your dynamics. So why don't we, let's see, why don't you just come up and grab hold of the facilitator you want, okay? And then if everybody chooses, let's say, Dwayne, well, I'll rearrange you, okay? All right.
This is one particular ray?
No. Anybody's ray. Anybody's ray, not one particular ray.
On the ray map?
Yeah, just in the ray map, anything they say, this in my life this year has shown me the strength or whatever of this ray. So it can be any ray, any place. It's very loose, very loose, very loose.
No problem.
Okay.
I'm with you, buddy.
Try to divide yourself equally. Okay, here, Dwayne, why don't you come over here so we get things a little bit, and then those of you who are loyal to Dwayne, please follow him. And then, what ray is that? Okay. And here's with Kathy. You have a few, right? Okay. And here's with Eva Marie, and here's with Livy. And come on, Jeff, he's good too, you know. Who wants to be with Jeff?
There's 2 people.
Come on, only 2 with Jeff. That's no good. You got to go with Jeff. Someone's got to go with Jeff.
Where's Jeff?
There he is. All right. Okay, I see some people that are hanging out. Hiding, come on, find a person. All right, scatter yourself about the room and go deep. All right, have fun. We'll see you later.